Despite teams resting their starters in Week 18 of the NFL season, we are not resting for you all because we know some of you have fantasy football championships in Week 18. So today we are bringing you 12 players and whether you should be starting or sitting them in your fantasy football championship. Now, I will say for this list of players this week, it probably warrants in Week 18 because it is the most diverse range of players I think we've talked about all season. We'll talk about some key guys that you should be sitting this week, but the starts this week, Cameron, I mean, we're starting off right away. Dylan Sampson against the Cincinnati Bengals this week. If you're at a pinch, I'm okay if you want to throw him into your flex this week.
Yeah, and he's not a must start. Let's get that out of the way. I'm not saying he's a top 12 guy. I'm not saying any of that. Right, underdog is, you can see on this week's drafts have him as running back 20. That even might be a little higher than I would throw him at. I'm probably closer to 24, but still, running back 2 range because we have guys like Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, most likely not playing or already, we already know they're sitting this week because they're going to be resting for the playoffs. Samson last week, with Quinshon Judkins, unfortunately, did he break his leg? Is that what happened? I think. Left with a season-ending injury. We'll leave it at that. Saw 11 carries, only had 27 yards. Wasn't great. They did play Pittsburgh, who's been better against the run, I guess you could say. 3 receptions on 3 targets, and he's a guy. The reason I like him is because 3 weeks before, in week 14, his last week healthy, he saw six targets, 5 receptions. Week 1 without Quinshon Judkins had 8 targets and 8 receptions against Cincy. So we know we can do it out of the backfield. So it makes me feel like he's a little more safe. Since he hasn't been good against the run, they've actually been a little bit better as of late.
Recently, yeah.
But like last week they were good because they destroyed the Cardinals, and so the Cardinals weren't running. Cardinals don't have a run game. They had given up 100 plus yards to running backs 3 weeks before that. So it's not an overly great matchup, but I think it's a good enough matchup in a game that's going to be gross no matter what because neither team cares. I think with the receiving upside, he's someone I'd trust enough that I could throw in my lineup. Yeah,
Judkins left in week 16, dislocated ankle and fractured fibula. So basically from the knee down, it was not pretty. So, but I think you nailed it on Judkins. Like, you could talk about the rushing production here, the rushing upside against the Bengals, who we know have been bad against the run all season. But you're right. The reason why I'm really interested in Dylan Sampson is because he can get 6 catches out of the backfield on any given week. He's already shown that this year, right? So there is a nice PPR floor you could potentially get here with Dylan Sampson. Let's say it gives you, if you're in a full PPR league, let's say it gives you 4 catches for 20 yards this week. That's a free 6 points that you're getting on top of the potential 12 carries for 50 yards, 55 yards that you're going to get out of him this week. So boil all that in. I think Sampson, again, I'm with you. I think he's going to come in somewhere between 20 and 24 for me, but if you want to be bullish in a matchup against Cincinnati, put him as high as 20. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Mm-hmm. He's a player that could definitely be hitting your flex spot this week. And I think the same about Kenny Gainwell, honestly, because I like him for the same reason. PPR upside here. A lot of people chased that against Cleveland last week. They'd also been getting gashed on the ground by running backs, but he only got 6.8 points after getting 3 straight games of 16 plus from Kenny Gainwell. Because, again, the big letdown last week against Cleveland was that he only gave you 3 catches for 12 yards. That's really what killed you. Baltimore, on the other hand, top 5 in targets, yards, and receptions allowed to running back this year. And Jamie Eisenberg over at CBS points out 7 different running backs have already caught 5+ passes against Baltimore this year. 7 different running backs with at least 5 catches. So that's why I'm in on Kenny Gainwell this week again. I'm willing to chase the PPR upside here in what I think is actually probably a better matchup against the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, like you said, 16 plus and actually 5 of his last 7 games.
If you want to expand that.
And in that stretch, he's only had 1 game with more than 10 carries. So you don't need him to get a ton of volume on the ground because, like you said, it's all receiving work. He's had, I'm looking at the stat right now, 5 receptions in 5 of those 7 games. So it's essentially, is he going to hit 5 receptions? Probably. All right, he's in your lineup. And so that's kind of it's kind of where he's at. It's funny, he's Jalen Warren. So he's stealing
right. Like we all wanted him to do to Najee Harris.
Exactly. And so
just took Arthur Smith.
Yeah. I don't see why you wouldn't lean in on it. It's a plus matchup, and he's been one of the most consistent backs since week 11. So
Right.
why would that stop now when they need a playoff berth here, or
Right.
need a win for a playoff berth?
Right, we're
Excuse me.
looking at Kenny Gainwell as a top 30 running back on the season as is.
Yeah.
So he's already a consideration in that regard for your flex
Mhm.
spot in your lineup. Before we get onto the running back sits, though, Cameron, I want to first thank everybody who has been around with us for the entire fantasy football season. You all make this possible for us, and we do hope that along the way you were able to win your fantasy football championship. But we're not going anywhere this offseason. We're still bringing you dynasty fantasy football content and NFL draft content as well. So if that's right up your alley, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell as well, so you know when all of our newest content is out. We're still doing 2 episodes a week. We're going to dive on into some dynasty rankings. We'll get into some trade targets in dynasty formats as well. We'll start breaking down some of the rookie class. So much to look forward to this offseason that we don't want you to miss out on. So even though the redraft season, best ball season is over, we are diving neck deep into dynasty content this offseason. Let's pivot to running back sits now, Cameron. Tony Pollard, been playing better as of recent, but you're willing to sit him against the Jaguars this week.
Yeah, like you said, he's seen 25, 14, 21, 18 carries. That's good for 10 plus PPR points in each of his last 4. Jacksonville's been a buzzsaw, though, against running backs. I mean, they have been unbelievable this year. And, I was looking at the stat and I couldn't believe it. They haven't allowed 100 rushing yards to running backs since week 10. And week 10 was the only week they allowed that the entire season. This is the only week they've given up 100 rushing yards to running backs. And they want to win this week. Jacksonville, at this point, they do have a chance at the 1 pick. They would need Denver to lose against Denver play the Chargers this week, and then the Patriots lose against the Jets. So very unlikely that the Pats lose against the Jets this week. However, Denver loses, Jags win, Jags could slide into that 2 seed. So they are definitely playing to win, playing at noon, so they don't know what's going on in any of these other games. And I think if that defense knows that they need to win against Tennessee, I'm not going to be super optimistic about Tony Pollard, who's struggled in non-plus matchups this year.
Right. I mean, and you go through the game log. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's Jonathan Taylor who's been getting it done. Tony Pollard got 60 yards in their last matchup back in week 13, I believe it was. But otherwise, it's been Jonathan Taylor who's really only been able to top that mark since then. So if you're looking at a day for Tony Pollard where you're getting 15 carries for 60 yards, and that's all you get out of him for the day, because Tyjae Spears is now more involved as well. He's kind of becoming more of the pass catching back. It's 6 points, right? Yeah. And I get you might not have many other options if you're missing a Saquon Barkley this week, but I would consider looking the direction of a Dylan Sampson and Kenny Gainwell this week if I do have the choice, even though Tony Pollard was, again, gashing all these different defenses for 100 plus yards last week. Didn't get over the you got to 70 yards, I believe he got to. I can't remember off the top of my head, but not enough for me to chase here this week against Jacksonville, who, like you said, has just been a buzzsaw for running backs the entire season. I'm gonna admittedly kind of take a scapegoat here. Michael Carter. It's a terrible matchup against the Rams, but you just had 2 great spots for Michael Carter against Atlanta and against Cincinnati. Yet all he could give you was 108 total yards and 12.8 total points across those 2 weeks. That's just not going to cut it. I can't even think about placing him into your lineup now against the Rams, who are bottom 10 in schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed to running backs this year. Again, even with Josh Jacobs, with Saquon Barkley not playing this week, potentially other options that might not play as well. No interest. I don't care that he's Arizona's lead back. That's really not worth much to me this week.
Yep. No, that's really what it comes down to. There's a ton of other guys like Tyler Algier. I think I'd rather turn to this week.
Corum, same matchup.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So even if I know they're the backup, I'd rather have them over Michael Carter right now.
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Underdog, where you can get into the game this season playing Pick'em. It's extremely simple. Just pick higher or lower on 2 or more of your favorite players. For example, I'll pick the hires on Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, and Xavier Worthy. If I played $10 and got all 3 of them right, I would win $60 just by watching football. And that's the beauty of Pick'em. You can track your picks and your wins while you enjoy the game. Now, if you're not on Underdog yet, scan the QR code on your screen or use our code FELLAS when you sign up, because new customers will get $50 in bonus funds when you put your first $5 on the app. Plus, Underdog will give you a free pick to use in your first entry. Again, that's code FELLAS over on Underdog. Now let's get you back to the rest of the show. Let's kick it on over to the wide receiver position now. We'll start with the wide receiver starts of the week. Wan'Dale Robinson against the Dallas Cowboys. Cameron, feels about as free money as you can get this week.
Yeah, I was looking at it. The dude is 6th in receptions right now. He's 12th in receiving yards. This is among wide receivers. Trey McBride's a little bit higher. CMC's passed him in receptions, which is crazy that he's got.
Which is crazy.
CMC's got a legit shot at 100 receptions, 1,000 receiving yards, and 1,000 rushing yards this season, which is otherworldly. But yeah, Wan'Dale has been uber consistent, and he's had one game since week 9 with under eight targets. He's just he gets the volume, and he's the guy right now for Jackson Dart, who's been playing decent enough, and against this Dallas pass defense that they don't have much to play for. I mean, neither do the Giants, but the Giants at least want to see Jackson Dart play well. I gotta imagine that Dart's going to continue to go to Wan'Dale on this one, especially coming off 11 catches for 113 yards last week. So this is he's our new Chris Olave kind of graduated this year. Becoming a legitimate wide receiver, and so Wan'Dale is now taking his place as a little PPR scam. So I like
completely different draft capital, but yep. we won't mind that in this analogy. No. Look, you filter the Dallas Cowboys defense by wide receiver points allowed. I mean, it's just not even close.
No, nutty.
Almost 40 points allowed per game to the position on the year. That is 3 more points per game than everyone else. You got the Colts and Detroit who are at in Baltimore as well, who are at 36 points per game. And then there's Dallas, who's at 40 points per game. You want to filter by schedule adjusted basis as well. On the season, you have Baltimore at 3.9. You have Indy at 3.7, Pittsburgh at 3.1. At the top, though, are the Dallas Cowboys, 7.6 more points per game on average. Yeah. I mean, it's stupid. So, yeah, you got a wide receiver playing the Cowboys more times than not. Like, if it were a different team, and I'm looking at Michael Carter or a wide receiver playing the Cowboys, like, it's a legit conversation of just like, I think I'd just rather play the wide receiver playing the Cowboys, regardless of if it's Wan'Dale Robinson or Darius Slayton even, right? Yeah. I won't go that far to actually say you should start Darius Slayton. But point being, Dallas is like the smash matchup of all smash matchups. And you want to talk about another smash matchup. How about Michael Wilson against the Rams? You look over the last 4 weeks. Surprisingly, it's not Dallas who's allowed the most fantasy points to wide receivers. It's actually the Los Angeles Rams at nearly 42 points per game allowed to the wide receiver position. Marvin Harrison Jr. also won't be playing in week 18. And really the only thing I need to do here is read you Michael Wilson's box scores when Marv hasn't played this year. First game without Marv, 15 receptions on 18 targets for 185 yards. Second game without Marv, 10 catches on 15 targets for 118 yards. Against the Rams in his third game without Marv, 11 catches on 16 targets for 142 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then against Houston, 5 catches on 11 targets for 54 yards and a score. If you don't want to do the quick math on calculating those averages, I have it here for you. It's 10 catches on 15 targets for 124 yards and almost 1 touchdown per game without Marvin Harrison Jr. We're running it back against the Rams. If Marv's out, Michael Wilson's a clear-cut top 5, borderline top 5 wide receiver in fantasy football.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. You talk about it since week 11. Wide receiver 2 in PPR formats, 21.2 fantasy points per game. And that's with the games with Marv playing mixed into it.
Right.
And he is second in receptions during that time frame. He's second in yards. He's second in touchdowns. Yeah, you start him in a matchup that he's already proven I can play pretty well, where the Rams, Sean McVay said, I'm not too concerned about playoff seeding. Right? They're not going to be going all out trying to force guys into the game to win this one. They're going to play their game, and they're not going to be too upset if Michael Wilson does have a game where he pops off for 150 and 1. So yeah, he's like you said. I mean, it's top. He's got to be a top 5 wide receiver right now this week, and and that might even be too low compared to what he's done.
Is he borderline top 3? How high do you want to push him this week?
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
100%. So yeah, if you're like Michael Wilson, or it's like no, stop. Look at the box score without Marv. Just play Michael Wilson this week. Especially over the handful of guys that we're going to talk about here now, Cameron. We'll talk about some wide receiver sits as well, too. Like, I don't know, we can call Ladd McConkey a prominent name, but he certainly hasn't been playing like it over the last, you probably have the number. I want to say the last 6 weeks, and it might even be longer, honestly. I talked about Ladd last week, nearly got shut out until there was 24 seconds left in the fourth quarter when he finally caught a 31-yard pass. No interest against Denver.
No, he is the wide receiver 59 in points per game in that same stretch since week 11. And he has had two games, with over 3 receptions. I mean, it's bad. I'd almost rather stream a tight end than play Ladd right now. Like, that's the numbers he's putting up. He's had 1 game with more than 40 receiving yards since week 11.
Yeah, it's been really bad.
It's been so gross. The 2 games he's been saved, he scored a touchdown. So he essentially is like streaming a tight end right now of, I'm hoping for 4 catches for 40 yards and a touchdown, and that's awesome. That's the ceiling. That just feels long after what we saw last year from him. But yeah, and especially against Denver, who's been fantastic against wide receivers, who needs to win this game to hold on to the 1 seed. Yeah, I have no interest in trying to fire up Ladd and hoping that this is the week where he's the true wide receiver 1 in this offense after he hasn't been for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, look, and I don't even know if this is like Denver's defensive backs against Ladd McConkey. Yeah. I honestly think this is Denver's front 7.
Yeah.
Against the Chargers offensive line.
If you've watched Justin Herbert, he has not had a clean pocket in 6 weeks.
Literally 2 months. Yeah. In 2 months, he has not had a clean pocket. But that's the trend you notice, right? Because it was around week 11 where you're starting to lose offensive linemen like flies. You're literally playing backups to backups at the tackle position. Ty and I talked about this as well last week, where even the guard center guard combo for this team has been like playing well below average, right? They bring in Mekhi Becton, has been playing up to average, or playing up to what he was playing in Philadelphia last year. So yeah, I mean, you can look at the cornerbacks, right? It's like, okay, you can get some Pat Surtain here, sure, but like, I don't know, who's to say Nick Bonito also doesn't have a field day. Exactly. I don't even know does he have a projection on Underdog right now? I want to do a side quest. Bonito, no, I don't believe he has a pickup. I was just going to see if I could get higher on 1.5 sacks for him this week if he records multiple sacks. But point being, all that to say, Ladd McConkey, not a great option, especially considering the quarterback matchups and considering this Chargers offensive line literally just cannot allow a competent passing game to exist within the structure of the Chargers offense right now. Terry McLaurin is going to be my wide receiver sit of the week here. I am very aware that the Eagles are looking at sitting a multitude of starters this week, but from what I am seeing on New Year's Day, January 1st, 2026 at 11:28 a.m. Central Time, it looks like Quinyon Mitchell is going to be one of the starters that is playing for the Philadelphia Eagles this week. We don't have firm confirmation on that yet, but from what I'm seeing, it seems to be leaning a bit more towards the offense. You get a few key pieces on defense as well, but I've seen nothing on Quinyon Mitchell not suiting up this week. And I want to pick on Scary Terry here because this faceoff is becoming Walmart Mike Evans, Marshawn Lattimore between these two. You look at week 11 last season, Quinyon Mitchell shadowed Terry McLaurin on 20 of 25 routes, and it was a complete goose egg for Terry. 0 targets, 0 receptions, 0 yards. Fast forward to January in the postseason, you got Quinyon Mitchell shadowing on 36 of 48 routes. 1 reception on 4 targets for 7 yards. And Quinyon Mitchell logged an interception on Terry McLaurin as well. So I'm good passing on that. If Quinyon Mitchell is going to be shadowing 75% of the routes on Terry McLaurin, then only frees up 25% of routes to have any sort of competent offense flow through Terry McLaurin. I'm good just taking a pass here in this matchup, assuming that Quinyon Mitchell is a full go for the Eagles this week.
Yeah, I don't think he's a must sit by any means, right? If you like, just with the way the week's going to go. But if you're in a championship right now, we're assuming that you have better options than Terry McLaurin, right? We're assuming that you're not we're assuming that you have a good team, essentially, is what I'm saying. Yeah. And if you do, move on, right? Go find somebody else other than Terry. For me, like Ladd is. I wouldn't start him anywhere.
No. I agree. Ladd is, if I'm flushing out my rankings here, Ladd is 100% below Terry McLaurin this week.
Yeah, and considerably. But like you said, if you have the ability, or if you're between two guys right now, Terry should be the one that you're. I don't want. I mean, you got Marcus Mariota going into Philly. Even if Philly's playing the backups, you have no idea what that looks like,
Yeah.
right? From their perspective, and so yeah, I'm good passing on Terry this week.
Can we do just a quick? I just want to do a quick comb through of
Mhm.
the other wide receivers. Again, if you're looking over on Underdog, it's
Yep.
their weekly Sunday battle royale slate. I just want to do a quick list of other names going around. Parker Washington is going as a wide receiver 19 right now. Like he's one where like I'm okay if you want to play him ahead
Yep.
of Terry McLaurin this week, based on for God knows what reason he's now the league guy. The Jacksonville wide receiver core is just like beyond me at
Yep.
this point. Brian Thomas is an interesting one. He's going 2 spots ahead of Terry. Jalen Waddle, I would, even though he gets Gonzo this week, I think I'd rather play Jalen Waddle ahead of Terry McLaurin.
Mhm.
Christian Watson against the Vikings. What do you think on that? That one just piques my curiosity a little bit.
I think I'm still gonna go Terry because they did just announce it's Clayton Tune starting, and
Yes.
I
Yep.
don't want to mess with that against the way Brian Flores has been playing lately.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
I also do just want to set the record straight because I have said that New England's playing the Jets twice now, and they are playing Miami. So I am
Yeah.
sorry that I have said
No,
that.
no.
But they are playing Miami. So don't yell at me in the comments. I realize my mistake right now.
We'll just tell you to fast forward to the
Yep,
minute mark of the
exactly.
video, and then you can feel bad about yourself for
Uh-huh.
nagging on Cameron 2 seconds after he corrected a mistake. Um, I get it though, because you look at some of the other wide receivers going here, and it's like you're looking at Chimere DK at wide receiver 28, Kyle Williams at wide receiver 27, Jaden Higgins, wide receiver 29 over on Underdog. Hey, my boy Darius Slayton is going,
Yeah.
going 2 picks after Lad McConkey. So at any rate, I get it. Terry McLaurin might not feel like a must sit this week, but again, if you're deciding between him and Wandale, it's pretty clear Wandale for me. There
Yeah.
might even be a handful of other running backs that I'm potentially looking at ahead of Terry McLaurin.
Mhm.
I just worry the floor here. The floor here is, I think, shockingly low. It's a goose egg, like I talked about, but I think the ceiling is just so capped as well.
Yep.
Where if you might only get 3 catches for 54 yards like he gave you in week 16.
He does feel like him and DJ Moore are the bottom of the tier,
Yes,
that tier of
I
wide
agree.
receivers. I think that's the best way to put it for sure.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. Them being at 23 and 24 over an Underdogs Battle Royale contest, I would 100% agree in that regard. Let's wrap the show up here, Cameron. We got some quarterback and tight end streamers for you all in week 18. Again, really appreciate the support you all have poured out to us over the course of the season here. We will not be going live on Sunday morning for week 18. Just a few different obligations in the way of that happening for us. So if you do have start sit questions, maybe what I'll say is leave them down in the comment section below, and we'll give you our thoughts at some point before kickoff on Saturday or Sunday games, depending on the players that are involved there. So we want to do something to make sure you all are set up well for week 18. But yeah, leave your starts and questions down in the comments below. We'll get back to a handful of them and help you bring home that title if you are playing in week 18. Though I think you should just contact your fantasy manager, your fantasy commissioner, and say, hey, can we move this up to week 17, please? So I don't have to worry about not having Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley in the championship. So I digress. Jackson Dart, camera. Let's talk about some tight end quarterback tight end streamers here. Look, I get that Mike Kafka doesn't really want to have Jackson Dart doing much from a throwing perspective, but if you're gonna open up the pass calling playbook here for Jackson Dart, I really hope it's against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, he in games where he's thrown the ball more than 25 times since week 6, when he really started taking off, he scored 23, 29, 27, 26, 23, 25. In games where he's thrown less than 25 times, he scored 19, 13, and 1 against Minnesota. So if you're playing Dallas, gonna assume that you're gonna throw the ball a little bit here. And so that's boded pretty well for him. And, they can say, hey, we want you to protect yourself as much as you can. And yet he still had 9 carries for 48 yards and two touchdowns last week. So Jackson Dart's going to play how Jackson Dart plays if you let him go out there. And if that has correlated to fantasy points as of right now, it kind of feels like not the same because obviously young Justin Fields was a much better runner.
Right.
But it kind of feels like that of, I don't really care what the on the field product looks like. No. Whatever he's doing is leading to fantasy points. And so you put him in your lineup.
Yeah, right. And everyone's like, "Oh, but Justin Fields isn't good." And it's just like, dude,
Yeah.
just play Justin Fields
Yep.
because if he's going to run around, he's going to rack you up a lot more fantasy points doing that than he is going to be
Yep.
sitting in the pocket trying to deliver you a perfect Aaron Rodgers ball. So, no, I'm with you here. I think you fire up Jackson Dart in it's always a plus matchup against the Dallas Cowboys this year. Look, I'm so just going to keep riding the Jacoby Brissett train. You thankfully got bailed out by a late touchdown to Trey McBride last week. He's already scored 20 plus points against the Rams back in week 4. I say 20 plus, it was like 20.04, but back in week 14, he's giving you a top 12 finish in 9 of 11 games as the Cardinals starter. I just don't know what I need to keep telling people of like Jacoby Brissett's a top 10 play. I've been like uber aggressive on him in my rankings, and that's come back to bite me a handful of weeks. But again, he's a top 12 play. The only quarterback to not score 20 plus points against the Rams in their last 5 contests was good old noodle arm Kirk Cousins last week, which should really not surprise anybody. So Jacoby Brissett, I think, is just, again, a smash matchup against the Rams if they're not too concerned about seeding. I won't say that Jacoby Brissett is also auditioning for the starting job next year because I do think he probably is the starting quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals next year. We have a whole offseason to unfold and see what happens with Kyler Murray and the sorts. But look, if I'm Jacoby Brissett, I want to go out there and sling the ball well in my last game of the season and say, hey, no, I deserve to be your starting quarterback going into the 2026 season.
For sure. And Jonathan Gannon, they've said it seems like he's going to stay now, but there's still a lot of question marks out there.
A lot of questions.
Is he the head coach next year? So you got to imagine he's going to, be pushing this team we put up a real stinker last week. Let's at least end on a good note. So maybe my job's safe come Black Monday.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, they've got motivation to win this game. That's for sure. And if Sean McVay is concerned about seeding, that's a matchup. Again, I'm willing to say this team could beat up on another team that's willing to potentially kick their feet up this week. Let's wrap it up. Tight end streamers, Cameron, Michael Mayer, no Brock Bowers on IR, gets Kansas City Chiefs this week. Considering the tight end position is just like a close your eyes and throw a dart at a board and whoever it lands on, you might as well play. Michael Mayer is a fine option.
Yeah. No, like you said, no Brock Bowers. Last week had 10 targets, 9 receptions, 89 yards. His last game before that without Brock Bowers, he had 7 targets, 5 receptions, 50 yards and a touchdown. So if there's no Brock Bowers, and especially now that Jacoby Myers is gone, there's not a lot of other options to throw the ball to. So yeah, I'm gonna say that he's gonna have a pretty decent week. I'm not gonna go too crazy, too overboard here.
Yeah.
But especially, the underdog's got him at the tight end 12. I don't hate that at all. Kansas City, you're starting a 3rd string quarterback, so it's not like they're going to be moving the ball a ton, which means the Raiders are going to have chances to throw. So yeah, I like him a lot in this week, especially as a streamer.
Yeah, I think he's a perfectly fine streaming option this week if you need a guy. I'll keep riding the wave on Colston Loveland here. Career day against San Francisco, 21.4 PPR points, 94 yards and a score to help boost that number. For those counting, though, that's 10 plus PPR points for Colston Loveland in 4 of his last 6 games. So I'm willing to bet on that streak continuing against the Detroit Lions, who will be top 12 in points allowed this year. And can I say that I think Ben Johnson, even though it's week 18, even though Chicago's locked into their playoff spot, I don't think Ben Johnson wants to take his foot off the gas against the Detroit Lions.
No, I think at home right now for the Bears, I think if anything, Jared Goff's going to have a really rough day. I think that
I don't want to call this a bloodbath because I think it's a little bit reckless. But if this game ends up being 35-17, I don't think that would surprise anybody.
Especially after last week when Detroit did not even look interested in playing against Minnesota. And at this point they don't want to win because they'd rather have the better pick, and then they get the
fourth place schedule next year. If Minnesota beats Green Bay,
the only
quarterback. Oh
yeah.
Man.
Yeah, and Detroit killed them last week. Was that earlier this year that they killed them, or was that last? Yeah, earlier this year that Detroit destroyed Chicago. So you got to imagine Ben Johnson's coming for blood.
Oh yeah, it was 52-21. I didn't realize the score was
I knew
that bad.
I knew somebody killed them. I couldn't remember who, but yeah, the Lions destroyed them. So I gotta imagine Ben Johnson's coming out to say, "Hey, we figured it out."
I didn't remember it was
Luther Burden maybe should have been my start of the week because he might have 1,000.
Well, if he ends up playing, he got hurt at the end of week 17.
Oh, that's true.
He got hurt. I know.
Why do they hurt good players?
The
script writers have to figure this out.
I did not realize it was that bad. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I thought it was again closer to that like 40-17 kind of game, but you're talking, oh man, 50, put up a 50 burger on him. Yeah. No, I think Ben Johnson's going to want to come back swinging this week. Yeah. Like you said, against a Detroit team that just, what they have nothing to play for.
Yeah.
Like pride. Sure. Dan Campbell might want him to play for pride, but like, oh brother, if Brian Flores broke your team that bad last week, you're not coming into week 17 with good team morale right now. So Colson Lovett, I think could be a player who takes advantage of that this week. We'll put a pin in it there. We'll keep it nice, short, and sweet for you all this week. Again, we'll continue being with you all off season for Dynasty and NFL draft content. You can follow us on our other socials as well for all sorts of other exclusive content over there. FFL is over on Twitter. The FFL is over on Instagram. Fantasy Football Fellas on Facebook and TikTok. If you are a YouTube person through and through, and you're watching this on YouTube right now, we've got a place for you all as well. I completely get it. Fantasy Football Fellas Shorts here on YouTube. You can follow Cameron and I on our personal socials as well. I am at Lucas Wenzel on X, Camlaw FFF Cameron. We'll be back next week, and I want to make sure I get this right. We will be bringing you our Dynasty. Yes, we're diving into Dynasty rankings next week. We'll start at the quarterback position, hit the running back position as well. We'll be doing that for the next couple weeks here on the channel. So make sure you tune in for that to kind of get our recap thoughts on the 2025 season, how that impacts Dynasty rankings, and even like, dare I say, early redraft rankings in some way as well going into 2026. So make sure you tune in for that next week. We'll see you all then. Deuces.
Deuces.